advocate for equity and a passionate advocate for equity and system change. Today, she will lead the capacity building workshop series Ethical AI for Nonprofits Using AI with Accountability and Care. Please join me in welcoming Samia. With that, I will hand it over to Samia. Samia, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gaurav. I'm just going to share my screen. I don't know if I have access to that. Can you
You have.
have
I'm
access? Okay, awesome. Thank you. There you go. So I'm just doing this so that I can also see other parts of my screen while you see this. Gareth, can you just give me the go ahead if you're able to see my screen? Okay, awesome. So, welcome everyone. As Gaurav mentioned, my name is Sami Hassan. I'm the executive director here at the Council of Agencies Serving South Asians. Right off the bat, I do want to say that I am not an expert on AI itself, and I don't claim to be an expert on AI. Where this presentation will focus is the ethical aspect of using AI in the nonprofit sector. So just a little bit of background. I have done some work. I was on maternity leave for a year, and while I was on leave, I've done some work in the nonprofit sector in terms of using AI and how to ethically incorporate into charitable sector. So if you have questions around which platform you should be using, what you should be using it, how to co-work and all of that, I'm not the right person for that. But I can answer some questions in terms of creating AI related policies for organizations. What I can say is right off the bat, I think one our sector is probably one of the sectors that is behind other sectors in terms of incorporating AI. I think it's because our sector is known as the human sector, right? Human-centered sector. And because of that, there's been a lot of hesitation around how to ethically use AI so that we are also keeping the well-being of our clients at the forefront. We are making sure that we're not doing anything irresponsibly. So I understand all of those hesitations. CAS is a social justice organization, and we, in our ethical AI policies, we made sure that we kept that social justice as the foundation of our work. So today, we don't have a lot of time, but in the 60 minutes that we have together, I'm hoping to go over some of these things in terms of ethical and responsible AI use, what privacy and confidentiality looks like, what to share and what not to share with AI tools, what are acceptable and prohibited uses of AI, how to do proper oversight and verification if you are using AI, if your staff are using AI, how to review for bias and anti-oppression when you're using AI for your work, how to properly do acknowledgements and how to create AI policies for your organizations. And then finally, how we're going to talk about some practical scenarios and go over. You can have a chance to let me know what you think is ethical, what is not ethical, what should be done differently in these practical situations. So before we start that, I would like to acknowledge that the work of Council of Agencies Serving South Asians takes place on traditional Indigenous territories of the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and most recently the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. This territory is part of the Dish with One Spoon Treaty, which is an agreement between the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. This territory is also covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. Today, see Takaranto, which is the traditional Mohawk name of this area called Toronto, and it actually means trees in the water, and its surrounding areas are still home to Indigenous people, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to meet, work, and play on this territory as settlers. We continue to honor the First Nation, the Métis, and Inuit people who have been living on this land since time immemorial. So to start, again, like I said, AI will definitely, so it's here to stay, and whether we like it or not, I think there might be what I've noticed in my work is there might be a generational gap in terms of how comfortable we feel in using AI for organizations that have a lot of young folks that are working in those organizations. 90% chances are that those staff are already using AI in some form, whether or not it's approved or not by the organization. It's just, that's the way that technology is embedded into the younger generation. And the way that they have incorporated into their work, most likely it is being used. So the best approach is to kind of try to get ahead of the game and try to create some policies so that you can guide that use of AI. We can't, I mean, you can try, but in my personal opinion, in my expert opinion, I don't think that banning any form of AI is going to be helpful for our sector because, like I said, chances are people will continue to use it. And it's here to stay. There's in the last 2 years, I would say there's been a huge influx of AI technologies, the talk of about AI, investments into AI. There's a whole entire conversation we can have about the ethics of creating AI and the resources that go into it, but that's not the topic of conversation today. Um, my goal is to help folks today to understand how to navigate AI being used at their organization. So, like I said, I think for our sector, the charitable sector, it's a little bit more challenging than other sectors that are incorporating AI, especially the tech sector or the education sector. Our sector, our core principles are that it's human centered, right? So we hold the community trust, we hold the community stories, we hold community relationships. And so we must ensure that if we're looking for efficiencies in our work, which we are, because the truth is our sector is always underfunded. So we rarely get enough funds to do the work that we're doing. We're always at 150% capacity or 200% capacity based on what our funding is. And if, especially if we're serving the South Asian communities or other racialized communities, you can expect that funding to be even lower. So, especially with things like administrative support, a lot of our organizations, we have staff that are doing the frontline services work, but also doing the administrative support work for that particular role. I say to my staff, like, I would love for each of you that are leading projects to have your own administrative assistant, but unfortunately, we don't have the funding to be able to do that. So, yes, efficiencies are something that we are continuing to look at in our sector so that we can better serve our communities. But we have to make sure that our search for efficiencies does not override the fact that we need to maintain confidentiality, we need to maintain equity in the work that we do, and we are accountable to the communities that we serve. So we need to maintain all of that as we continue to look for more efficiencies in our work. Um, and again, the core of what I'm going to talk about today is that AI should be used to support our work, but not replace human judgment and community knowledge. So again, from sector to sector, the core principles will change. But for the charitable sector, this should be the core principle, whereas AI is only used to support our work. But at the end of the day, because we could be social justice organizations, we could be equity related organizations. So the judgment at the end of the day should be the final call should be by a human being. And community knowledge is where we should be seeking knowledge, not just AI. AI, again, like I said, it could be used for efficiencies to support that work. But we would always turn to community for expertise and knowledge. So, in terms of how to create that principle in practice and how to practice that in our day-to-day work, basically, when we're doing the work, the goal is to create the foundation of the work ourselves. So, as staff, so this is the way that we will explain how AI can be used to our staff. The foundation of the work should be created by a human being. So whether it's you're creating a grant, whether it's you're creating a project, or you're creating an email, whatever it is that you're doing, the initial work, the purpose, who the audience is, what the key message is, what the context is, what the equity lens is. So all of that should be created by a human being, and then AI could be used to enhance some of that. So what do I mean by enhance? If you need to change the structure, for example. So the other day, I was looking at some of our policies at CASA that have been drafted a long time ago, and the structure of that is very broken. It's not very pleasing to look at. So then I used Claude, which is the approved AI system here at CASA, to recreate the structure. So I inputted our letterhead. I said, this is the structure that I want. I want a table of contents. I want each policy to have a title. So, and the policy has already been created. So I'm not asking AI to create the policy for me, but I'm just asking it to structure it so that it is readable to our staff, to our board members, and if we're sharing it with our funders. Because oftentimes we're asked by funders to share a policy. So that is what I mean by structure. Tone. So sometimes we are trying to draft an email or a letter, and we take a long time to do it because we can't come across the tone that we're trying to convey. So if you're trying to be, for example, you've typed a letter and you're sending it to somebody for support with a case. And I'll talk about how to take out all the verifying information from the AI before you input it. But if you wanted, the tone should be we're looking for help. We're not being demanding. Can you check my email to make sure that I'm not sounding demanding? So that's using AI to enhance your communication. Clarity, for example, if you are uh, going off, you've typed multiple pages of something, and oftentimes when we type things and we're not really strong in communication, we are tend to repeat what we're saying, and so AI can really help in condensing that information. So, like I said, all of the foundation has already been created. Then we are inputting it into AI to help enhance it. Brainstorming. A lot of folks have been doing that too. If they're doing a literature review, for example, so they can ask AI, like, what are some of the prominent researchers in this particular field? Then AI will give you a list of articles, and then you will need a human being to look at those articles to see whether or not it is reflective or if applies to the research that you're doing. So one thing that I do want you to be careful about when you're doing brainstorming or you're doing some research is that, so I learned this the hard way. So when I was initially exploring AI about a year ago, I did ask AI to look up some articles that are related to leadership. And so it produced a bunch of articles. And what had happened is there was a case of hallucination. So, hallucination in AI means that AI will make up stuff. So it will create articles that don't really exist. And so when I went back, so in this third step here, when I did the review and verify, I checked whether or not these articles that AI came up with actually exist. A lot of them didn't exist. So hallucination will happen. So it is technology. There's always room for errors when it comes to technology. So just be very, very careful with this third step. As you're using AI to enhance, this should not be your last step. The next step is verify and review. So everything that AI tells you, do not take it for fact. You need to double check it for if the sources are correct, if there's any bias, if there's any missing contacts, if confidentiality is being respected, and always verify. So with anything that you find on the internet, you will have to verify the facts to make sure that they're accurate. So this is the most important part of this AI journey for your staff, is to review and verify. And I've told our staff that you should verify at least 2 to 3 times that whatever AI has come up with is actually accurate. Then finally, number 4 is the approval and owning of the content that you've produced. So at the end of the day, when you've gone through this process where you've developed the foundation, then you've used AI to enhance it, and then the human the staff are reviewing it and verifying it. At the end, it has to be approved again by one of the staff. So the final responsibility of approving the content stays with the human user. So that could be, a manager or a director, depending on what the content looks like. But if it's, for example, an email, it's very important for the staff to review and verify, and then they will approve it and share it. There's been a lot of so where it goes wrong is when staff are using AI, but they're not checking. They're just copying and pasting. And that looks very sloppy. It looks very lazy and it looks very irresponsible. And I think that's where a lot of people have lost trust in AI, is when we've used it, but we have not relied our own judgment to approve it or finalize it. And like I said, that's the most important part at the end, to review it, to verify it, and then to approve it. So some guardrails for our AI policy, which we're still finalizing here at CASA, we have gone through various different variations of it. It's at the board level now. It's very close to being finalized. Our staff have signed off on it as well. So these are some of the principles that we have incorporated, and I'll share some resources with you at the end as well, in terms of how to create your own ethical AI policies. So being human-centered, so in all parts of our AI policy, being human-centered is at the core principle of it all. Humans should remain responsible for the content at the end. So if something goes wrong with the content, staff are not able to use the excuse that, it was AI that came up with this. So at the end, they know the process is you are the one who have to create the foundation of the work. The AI will enhance it, and then you have to review and verify, and then you provide approval and authorization for it. So there's 3 steps where human intervention is required, and 1 step where AI will enhance it. So this provides that human-centered approach to your ethical AI policy. Privacy. So I'll go into detail about what kind of data can be entered into AI and what should not be entered into AI. And like I said, because we're a charitable sector, a lot of our organizations provide frontline services. So this is very important for CASA because we don't provide frontline services. It may not apply as much, but we do have research that we do. We do have people that come and participate in our research. And so we do have sometimes information that could be used to recognize those people. So again, for our staff, this is also applicable, but it's more of a concern for organizations that provide frontline services. Again, so in your ethical AI policy, privacy should also be a central principle. Accuracy. So again, like I said, the most important part of that process that I just outlined in the previous slide is to verify before use. Like I said, AI will hallucinate sometimes. AI will come up with things that are not necessarily true. AI is not trained to be unbiased and to be anti-oppressive or trauma-informed. Although there are certain AI platforms that are working towards it, but there's no AI platform right now that you could say is 100% bias-free or harm-free or anti-oppressive. So verifying is always very important, which leads to the next principle of equity. So this webinar is for CASA members as well as our social justice member organizations from across the country. And so if you're part of either a CASA member or a social justice network, equity probably, I'm guessing, is the core of the work that you do, and drives most of the work that you do. So like I said, a lot of the AI earlier on, I would say about 3 years ago, there was a lot of issues with AI producing information that was very biased. it has been changed to some extent, but still, for our sector, reviewing the content and the enhancement that AI produces to our content should be as a very core principle of our AI policy. Um, Always review for bias, always review to make sure that there's no harm being produced to South Asian communities. So I'm going to focus on South Asian communities just because we did this webinar for CASA members. But obviously, if you serve other racialized communities, very similar principles would apply for your organizations as well. Transparency. So I'll talk about acknowledgement of AI use. So I think in our sector, I recently did an interview for a research on AI in the nonprofit and charitable sector, and I understand that what's happening in our sector is I think there's a little bit of embarrassment for using AI because we don't want to look like we're being lazy. We don't want to look like we are taking shortcuts. We are, like I said, a human-centered sector. And so we feel that if we acknowledge that we are using technology in certain ways to help us do our work, we will look like an organization that is not really focused on human beings and the community, which is not true. As a sector, there are ways for us to incorporate technology, like I said, in ethical ways, where we still keep the communities that we're serving at the center of our work. And so acknowledging, I think we have to shift the way that we see AI in our sector. And so I think acknowledgements, once we start to do them more and more, will be very important in just saying like I've used AI for this, but our staff have verified it and approved it. So that 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 outlook of AI changes in our sector. So I think that's one of the hurdles we have to get across, where our perception is that AI is always negative. And I'll be honest with you, about a year and a half ago, that was my perception as well. Like if anybody said that they're using AI, my perception was that this person is taking shortcuts and they're not really doing the work that should be done. But obviously that has changed over the years, and I recognize that it's something that could be used to help us in our sector because, like I said, we're always under-resourced. But the way that we do it, it has to be guided by certain principles. And then finally, mission alignment. So like I said, for CASA, we have certain principles, we have certain goals that guide our work. So you have to, when you're creating your own AI policies, you have to ensure that the policy is reflective of your own organizational values. And so with the policy that we've created here at CASA, we've made sure it has that social justice framework, it has that equity lens, it has that human-centered approach. And then we do a lot of research work as well. So we made sure that our policy is reflective of that too. So a lot of folks have asked us for templates of AI policies. Sure, we can share some templates, but then you have to make sure that you're looking at what your organizational goals are, what your organizational values are, and you align your policies to those specifically. Okay, so privacy, confidentiality, and what not to share with AI tools. So the saying is the safest prompt is one that contains no identifying or sensitive information. So this goes, like I said, for organizations that are doing frontline services. So you are not to paste personal, confidential, sensitive, proprietary, or identifying information into AI. If you are looking for research or information on a certain case, the best approach would be to remove any names, to remove any contact details, to remove any locations, any unique details and case facts before you put in the prompt into the AI tool that you're using. And then finally, you have to remember that just removing names is not enough. So if you have other identifiers in your content, you have to make sure that you go through that anything that locations, any other unique details about the individuals in that case, all of that have to be removed. So if you feel so I think in our sector we have this gut feeling about um, what is personal information and what is not. So you've already have had training in your work about personal information confidentiality. All of our organizations, I hope, have confidentiality agreements and policies in place. If you have doubt over whether or not this particular information will help identify who this person is, the rule is just to leave it out. Um, because you could still get information about if you're looking for facts, if you're looking for research, if you're looking for resources, you do not need to put in any identifying information to be able to do that. So just uh, as a caution, if you are feeling that that this information, you don't know whether or not this will be identifier for this person, I would suggest you just leave it out. So this, like I said, the safest prompt if you're looking for help with through AI on a person's case or a community's case, remove all of the personal information from there. So what is personal information? So you're going to remove names, contact details, demographic details, financial information, employment records, immigration or legal details, health information, accommodation requests, donor or applicant information. So this is for if you're looking for support on a case, you're working on a case for an individual or a community. This is the information you're going to remove before you put it into AI for a prompt to help you enhance a content, which could be an email, it could be a project report. You've already drafted it. Now you're just looking for AI to support you in enhancing it. Sensitive organizational information. So things like sensitive board discussions that are not public information, human resources matters that are not public information, personnel files, non-public financial records, legal matters, contractual agreements, confidential partnerships, if you're drafting strategies, if you're drafting grant content. So I've seen I know a lot of folks have started to use AI to help them develop grants. And so how AI is trained is the more information you feed it, most AI platforms will use that information to train it. So chances are, if you're using AI to come up with your grant ideas, you're sharing all your grant ideas, chances are that information will become public, as in when somebody else asks about the same grant to AI may use that same training data to create a grant for them, right? So you want to make sure that you're just like, when you're putting a grant together, and you have to keep it confidential because it's confidential to your organization. You want it to be a unique idea. You don't want others to take your unique idea. Same way, if you're sharing a lot of that information in an AI tool, chances are AI will use that information to train its platform to give that same information to others. So just be careful when you're drafting strategies and grant content when it comes to AI. And then community or case information. So again, if you're doing frontline services, if you're getting distress calls, complaints, incident reports, client stories, service inquiries, referrals, participant data, stories of harm, or details that could identify a particular person or group, leave that out of the prompts. So what you could do, so for example, if you get a distress call, somebody is looking for services of gender-based violence support in a particular area, without including any of the client information, you could say, I'm looking for GBV support for South Asian communities in the Scarborough area through an organization that can speak in this language. So I'm not using any identifier information in my prompt to AI. And then once AI gives me, okay, these are potentially the list of organizations that you could go to, I would like CASA has a list of member organizations and the type of services that they're providing. I would double check that with with that list. I would double check it with other lists that other organizations have come up with. Then I would also call a particular organization before I share it with the person who's given the distress call. I would call that organization. I've received information that you're providing this and this service. Is this accurate? And then I would provide that to the person who is calling. So de-identification is basically removing enough details that a person, partner, participant, or situation cannot reasonably be recognized. Okay, so a useful test in doing that is so just asking yourself, is AI helping you improve the work that you understand or replacing the work that you should be doing? So generally, um, for certain content creation, this will stop you in your tracks if you are using AI in an unacceptable way. So certain acceptable for our organization, I think for the sector, acceptable ways of using AI could be using AI, like I said, to brainstorm, to draft, to edit, to simplify, to organize, to translate for review, to prepare outlines, to create templates, or to improve clarity after the human user sets the purpose and the context. The context is super important. So afterwards, maybe I can send certain prompts that you can put into your AI tool to make sure that the context is very relevant to AI enhancing the content that you've provided it. Um, Without that context, it's just like an untrained assistant, right? If you're not providing context and you're providing your assistant to help you with a task, uh, it very likely that task will not be done according to your standards. So the way that you create prompts is very, very important. And I have found from some experts that are AI experts certain ways that you can write prompts so that the context of your organization, your values, and your purpose stays at the core of even just the enhancing work of AI. The prohibited or high risk. So I say high risk because some organizations may feel that it's still okay for AI to provide enhancements for these tasks, but that is something that you would have to decide in consultation with your community, in consultation with your staff, as well as your board of directors. So again, using AI to enter confidential information, replacing judgment, making decisions about people, answering tests or interviews, generating unverified evidence, or submitting work as if AI was not used. So again, like I said, I think there is a bit of a shame factor in our sector where we think that using AI will make people think that we're being lazy, or that we're not doing our due diligence. However, if you're following this process and this type of policy, we know that for the sector, our staff are making sure that we are creating the foundation, we're using AI to enhance it, then we're reviewing it rigorously, and then we're having a human being approve it. So it is a process, and so it's no longer considered to be, taking the shortcut. So, acceptable uses. So, I'll just define a little bit of what I mentioned in the previous slide. So, brainstorming, so ideas, campaign angles, workshops, activities. So, for example, if you have done a research project on something and you have to disseminate it and you have a campaign coming up, you can mention like this is going to be a public research. This is the public information that is going to be shared without any identifying information. This is the audience, this is the context, this is the type of organization we are, these are our member organizations. How can we create a campaign so that it has the greatest impact? We want to create a social media campaign. Can you give me some ideas of how to reach these populations? How do I create content on, for example, Instagram, so that I can get the attention of people between the ages of 14 to 18 for this particular campaign? So a lot of context is required for you to generate those ideas. Otherwise, the ideas won't be great, and then it's not really, you're just wasting your time. You're not really using AI to enhance your work. It actually might just water down the work that you could have just done yourself. Drafting, so outlines, templates, agendas, with original language already being there. So, for example, I have a meeting, obviously a non-confidential meeting. I have a meeting. These are the topics that we want to cover. We only have 1 hour to do this. Can you create an agenda where we're able to focus on this and this area with prioritizing these topics, and we at the end we want to be able to make decisions on these areas, right? So this is the context you want to be able to put in. The agenda is produced, and then you review it to make sure that all of the things that you want to accomplish in that meeting is being accomplished. You have the timings correct. You have the topics correct, and then you share that agenda out. Refining. So I already mentioned in terms of tone, grammar, readability, plain language. So I know in our sector, especially in, organizations that are serving South Asian communities, organizations that have a lot of South Asian staff, not everybody's at the same level of language proficiency. So there might be some people that are great at English language proficiency, which, just as a caveat, is not a mark of your intelligence at all. But if you're working in the sector, you want to be able to make sure that you're communicating with partners effectively, you're communicating with your staff effectively. You want to make sure that the grammar and readability of your communication is to a certain standard. And so AI can help with that. So I've done some training over the last year with some private schools that have staff that have varying levels of English language proficiency, and a lot of them are very hesitant to send out communication, whether it's like email communication or if they're just any written communication. They're very hesitant to do it because they are not as confident in their English language proficiency. So here's where AI can help in terms of getting the grammar correct, getting the tone correct, ensuring the readability is to your standard of the organization. Um, so that has helped a lot of organizations with their communication to help them enhance their communication. Again, the content is created, the initial original language is created by your staff, and then it's prompted into an AI tool to say, can you please check for to ensure I have the proper grammar. I don't have any spelling mistakes. I want to sound welcoming and open and friendly in this email. Can you rewrite this for me? So again, you're not asking AI I want to write an email to this person. I want to say this, blah, blah, blah. Write the email for me. But in fact, you are drafting the email first, and then you're asking AI to enhance it for you. Organizing, so non-confidential notes, action items, planning lists. So often, even here at CASA, we have started to use the note-taking for non-confidential meetings. We've started to use the note-taking that Zoom AI has, and that is quite helpful. And even with the Zoom AI, you can choose the way that you want to create meeting summaries, the type of structure that you want the meeting summaries to have at the end to create action items. This can really help you get organized. So I think a lot of us, again, struggle with administrative support to have people there physically taking notes, and then to have to remind yourself, like, these are the action items that came from this meeting on a regular day. Like, as an executive director, I attend like 5 to 10 meetings. And so for each meeting, there are action items. And so it's very hard for us to keep track of that. We've done it for a long time and we continue to do it, but I think there's more and more expectations of us to do more and more in our sector. And so because of those expectations, I think we deserve, to get some help. So if we can use AI to help us just organize what our tasks are for the day, for the week, for the month, that helps kind of relieve a lot of the anxieties that, if there's any executive directors in the room, you can probably relate to that as well. We have like so many things on our mind. We have so many to-do lists, but if we have that in an organized way, that is really helpful for me personally, and I'm sure for others as well. And then checking gaps. So if we are, for example, if we're doing research and we're creating a questionnaire for our research or a survey, and we have to, we're targeting certain audiences, and we need to use certain type of language. The research is on a certain topic. So we've created the research questions already. What we could do is, again, if it's non-confidential, we can feed it into AI. I'm trying to create a survey. I'm trying to keep it maximum 20 minutes for people to fill it out. This is what I'm trying to target. These are my research objectives. And these are the audiences that I want to target. Can you tell me if these questions align with what I'm trying to do? If not, can you provide me suggestions on how to change these questions so that I can better target this audience? So certain platforms like SurveyMonkey have their own AI built into them. And so you can get some support from their internal AI tools, or if you have other approved AI tools that your organization is using, your staff can also use that to check those gaps, especially if you're doing research. Prohibited and high risk uses, like I mentioned, uploading confidential, personal, sensitive information, using personal or unauthorized AI accounts for organizational work. So this is a big one, and this is something that I've had to deal with coming back from parental leave. I did a scan of what AI tools we're already using in the workplace, and I found without having an AI policy, most of the staff were already using some sort of AI. And so, again, like I said, our goal is to be ahead of the game and to make sure that we have guidelines for that use of AI. So, you know, what I'm not going to recommend a particular platform, but whatever platform that you are using, just make sure that it is a paid subscription, because when you have a paid subscription, you are able um, uh, to guide that account in terms of how the information is used, where the information is stored, depending on who what tool you're using. So there's a lot of things that you have control over when you have a paid subscription. When your staff are using unpaid, just OpenAI that are free, a lot of that information is just out in the open. It could be used to train AI modules. It could be used to sell your data. So you have no control over that data if it's an unpaid account. So just make sure that your staff are using authorized AI platforms at your organization. Another thing that I have come across, unfortunately, is as I've been doing more and more interviews and hiring, um, I don't know. I think people think that they can't tell that the interviewer can see that you're using AI to answer your questions. So this is the big one. I will say, and if you follow me on LinkedIn, I've put a post on that as well. I personally feel that if a candidate is using AI in a live interview, it's akin to cheating in a test. And that's because like the interview is meant, unless the interviewer has authorized the use of AI, but if it's not explicitly authorized, and you're using AI to answer questions, I can tell very easily if you're using AI to answer questions, the way that you're speaking. It doesn't sound like a conversation anymore. It sounds like you're reading something. And people that have been doing interviews, hundreds of interviews, can tell very easily. So I would say for me, that is a prohibited use of AI. For you, it could be something different for your organization. But I think when you come for an interview, the expectations are you've done your research on the organization. You've done, obviously, you should already know what your own capabilities are and what your own skills are. And you should be able to, as a test, you should be able to align your skills to the organizational's needs. And I say that as a test of your intelligence, right? And if you're not able to do that on your own, then for me, it's a red flag. And so, and on the other side, on the flip side, a lot of folks are using AI to screen, rank, and score and recommend candidates, which I think is also problematic in our sector. It might not be in like the tech sector, but for the charitable sector, I feel it is a problem because again, for a lot of us, we lead with social justice at the core of our agencies, with compassion for our agencies. We understand that our communities have had a history of inequities and oppression. And so when we look at candidates to hire for our positions, the human being can look at it through that lens. AI cannot do that. And so I think for me personally, using AI to screen, rank, and score and recommend candidates would be a prohibited use for our organization. Generating legal, medical, immigration, counseling, or financial advice without qualified review. So again, like that eliminates the use of like all these people that are spending years and thousands and thousands of dollars in getting degrees to get educated in these fields. And I think it's not doing good service to ourselves when we're just using AI to get medical information or legal information or financial advice without having a human that is qualified to do that work, to review that. Submitting AI generated work as fully human created when AI has had a substantive role, and relying on AI generated claims, citations, laws, or statistics without verifying. So I said before, I've seen myself AI hallucinate and create sources and stats that are not real and that do not exist. So verifying information is really, really important. So at the end of the day, AI cannot be the decision maker, the expert, the interviewee, or the substitute for your professional responsibility. So I think I have quite a lot. So I'm going to try to wrap up. And if I've already gone through something, I'm not going to repeat it. So again, human oversight, I talked about this a little bit in terms of verifying and fact checking, verifying facts, citations, dates, statistics, laws, funder requirements, consulting the original sources whenever possible. So one of the ways to put in a prompt with AI is if you're asking for information, is to provide the original source. So you can put that in your prompt, like I need the original source of the data that you're pulling out, and then you go and on your own verify that that source actually exists and that information that AI has presented to you is what is actually in the source. Reviewing for missing context, outdated information, fabricated references. I talked about this. Ensuring that the final output reflects, I wrote CASA here, but your own organizational values and actual work. Some things that you want to check before using the content is facts and dates. Are the facts accurate? Are they current? Health and safety content, could this be interpreted as advice? Statistics and sources, do they come from real and original sources? As I mentioned, legal and policy claims, has someone who is qualified provided these or has reviewed them? If not, then you should not be using those legal and policy claims. Organizational context, does it reflect our actual programs and commitments? Have I used our organizational context in the original prompt? Confidentiality, have all identifiers and sensitive details been removed? So this is very important for CASA, and I'm sure for a lot of your organizations as well, to review your AI content for bias, equity, and anti-oppression considerations. So this is why human review is so important. So what AI systems can do, because it's not humans, they're produced based on training data. And like I said, they're getting better at what type of training data they're providing to the AI platforms. But there's still a lot of data that is being used to educate AI that is problematic. It's filled with stereotypes, it's filled with inequities, it's filled with bias. So you want to make sure that there's a human being that is looking for the content for stereotypes for deficit framing, which means that it is always looking at a community as having something missing. That is a deficit framing, or harmful assumptions about certain communities, asking whether the community voice, context, and complexity are present, check for accessibility, plain language, and cultural responsiveness, and review whether the output aligns with anti-racism, anti-oppression commitments. So some of the questions that you can ask for yourself when you're doing the review, and you can use this to share with your staff as well when you're doing a review for equity and stereotypes and bias, you want to ask, does this information reinforce stereotypes or race community complexity? Does it speak about communities without community voice? Does it use a deficit-based or pathologizing language? Does it assume dominant culture, corporate or Western norms? Is the language accessible, respectful, and accurate? And could this harm racialized immigrant, Muslim, Sikh, Hindu, Tamil, or other South Asian communities? So again, like I said, this webinar is mainly for CASA member organizations and our social justice network. So that's what we focused on, specifically South Asian communities here. But if you're serving other racialized communities, you want to make sure that your content is not producing or furthering harm or trauma to those communities. And if it's different racialized communities, it might be different forms of harm and different forms of oppression that you might need to look out for. For the Black community, it might be different. For Indigenous communities, it might be different. For South Asian communities, it might be different. So that's why it's very important for you to make sure that your community is at the center of your equity review. So disclosure. So like I said, and we're almost done. Hopefully we'll have a couple of minutes for questions at the end. I think we need to get past the shame that we have in our sector of using AI. So that like you could probably see, this requires an entire process for you to use AI. It doesn't mean that you're lazy. It doesn't mean that you're taking shortcuts if you're using the proper process of using AI. So acknowledgement. So if I go back to my initial slide, you may not have noticed it, but here there's a presentation development note. It says AI tools were used to support the organization of this presentation. The presentation has been reviewed, revised, and approved by CASA staff. So there's no shame in doing that. And I think as a sector, we have to it has to be normalized in our sector that we can use the help to do better, to serve our communities better, because our resources are not infinite. We need to make sure that we are using technology to the best way, and while we keep ethics at the core of our work. So disclosures are important. So especially if you're using AI in a substantive way, and the way that you define substantive in your own policies I would leave that up to you, to your organization, but there has to be a definition of what is a substantive AI use. So here I've said major reports, research publications, toolkits, training curricula, public education resources, funding proposals, public statements, campaign materials, and evaluation frameworks. And a sample acknowledgement, I read what I have at the beginning of the slide, but artificial intelligence tools were used to support the drafting, editing, organization, or idea generation. All content was reviewed, verified, revised, and approved by CASA staff. So in your AI policy, you would need to have the process of disclosure, whether it would be internal or where you would need to have external acknowledgement. So you would have your ED or a designated supervisor determine where an acknowledgement would need to be external and public, and where disclosure will need to happen internally. So that's all part of your policy, and you will need to decide as an organization how to do that. So again, I could have another whole webinar on how to create a strong AI policy, but I will share some resources with Gorat that she can share with all of the folks that have attended this session. There is a resource by an organization in Quebec that have come up with guidelines on how to create a good ethical AI policy for the charitable sector. So unfortunately, there's not a lot of experts right now in our sector on how to ethically use AI. There's a lot of hesitation, there's a lot of confusion. We don't have like an organization that we could go to for support to help us create policies. I know United Way is working on some stuff right now in terms of how to ethically incorporate AI into the charitable sector. But in the absence of that, I still have, and I've said this to my board as well, like we need to be ahead of the game. We already know that our staff are using AI in different forms. At this point, we cannot prohibit it. It just won't work, right? So I come from a policy background, and one of the things that I've learned is never to create a policy that you cannot implement. So sorry, go ahead. Is there a question? No? Okay.
No.
I will give you a few minutes at the end. I'm almost done. So if you are creating a policy that cannot be implemented, there is no point of you wasting your time to create that policy. Policies should always be created with the understanding that this can be actually practically implemented into our organization. And at this time, I do not think that it's practical for you to prohibit the use of AI completely because it just won't be implemented and it just won't happen. So what you want to look at is the scope of the policy, who it applies to, what are your approved tools, what are your data protection policies, what are your acceptable uses. So I've given you what we said are our acceptable uses for AI, what are the prohibited uses for AI, how to do proper human oversight of the AI content or the content enhancement, how to do an equity review. I think that's important for all of our organizations. And then to incorporate a training component where you have a mandatory training, orientation, how to do acknowledgements, and how to do ongoing learning. So again, like I said, I could do a full webinar on this, and I will share some resources afterwards on that. So I think what we'll do is, so these are the scenarios. I think they're very straightforward. I can just read through them and then you can have an idea of what is ethical and what is not. So for example, if you're doing a workshop, a staff member asks AI to create an anti-racism workshop slides and uses it as is without adding organizational context or review. Obviously, that's not ethical. It probably won't be a great presentation at the end of the day. Email editing. A staff member writes a difficult partner email, removes identifiers, and asks AI to make it clearer or more professional. That would be an ethical use of AI based on our policy, as long as all of that, the identifiers are removed. A distress call. A community member shares sensitive safety issue. A staff member copies the email into AI to summarize it. Obviously, it's unethical because it's a sensitive safety issue. The staff member has not removed identifiers. They have shared sensitive information into AI. So this is obviously a no-no. Hiring. A hiring panel uploads resumes and asks AI to rank candidates. So a lot of HR systems now come up with their own AI. So we use Collage HR, and Collage has its own AI that can do ranking for you. Again, in our sector, I personally think that hiring should be done because we're using the equity lens to do hiring. I'm sure all of you are. I hope all of you are. And so that requires a human analysis of the applicants and the resumes. So for us, that would be unethical. Grant proposal. Staff develop the program outcomes and evidence first, and then use the AI to structure and flow. I think that's okay, and that's an ethical use of AI. Interview. A candidate uses AI live during an interview to answer questions about their experience. You already know what I feel about that. I'm not a fan of people using AI for live interviews. Okay, so before using AI, this is a checklist that you can give to your staff that they are making sure they check this before they use AI to enhance their work. Some questions they should be answering are, am I using an approved organizational account or tool? If you're not, then you should not be using AI for your work. Have I removed all personal, confidential, sensitive, or identifying information? So obviously the answer for all of this should be yes. Am I using AI to enhance my work but not replace it? Am I verifying the facts, sources, and claims? Have I reviewed the output for bias, accessibility, and community harm? Does substantive AI use need to be acknowledged? So all of this should be something that your staff have to say yes to before they use AI to enhance their work. So I'm going to stop there. If you're able to stick around, I'll stop sharing my screen. We will share the recording of this with all of the folks that have attended this session. If there are questions, I can stick around to answer some questions. I know it was a lot of information, but I will definitely share the recording. You can go through it in your own time, and we will also share the resources that I've promised.
Are there any questions? Please feel free to ask.
Sami, I don't have a question, but just a comment. So thank you for this great presentation. And, AI is on everybody's mind. I've attended a few things last week, and, AI is on top of the list. So we thank you for bringing this conversation forward. I just wanted to kind of, make participants aware that, at CCMW, that is Canadian Council of Muslim Women, we have a very short-term project funded by Wage Canada, but we are working on developing an AI strategy. So it is an intersectional feminist AI strategy for Muslim women. But I think that, we are not very far from other racialized groups. We kind of have the similar challenges, if not the same. And I think this AI strategy that we hope to develop by next year, maybe by March of 2027, would really be an eye opener, because a lot of, you mentioned, the biases. I think that the real fear is actually, AI is not going to kind of augment the job losses, but actually people who don't know how to use AI well will be left behind. That's how I see it, because AI is already part of your world. If you're on your dishwasher, if it's a new appliance, it is prompted by AI. If you kind of go on a Google search, there is AI. So for people who don't know, AI is already controlling our lives in a certain way. But I think the key is to kind of hold that, key in your hands, to say the human approach or human-led AI is the best approach, keeping all those, social justice, the equity lens. But how much of it is possible, we don't know. The coming months or years will tell us. But I would just say that November is a forum that we plan to have in Toronto, and anybody that is interested, please email me, and we can send you an invite to the forum where we will have a discussion on the strategy that is being built. But thank you for this.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for those. So I see the chat here. So as soon as we have the board sign off on our AI policy, I will just seek permission if we're able to share that with all of you. I know some people have requested for CASA's AI policy. We can definitely, once we have permission, share that out. But in the interim, I will share the resources that we used to create our AI policy. Shaz?
Thank you, Sana. The session was really informative. I think one of the things that probably, as a social justice sector and specifically for nonprofits, we need to be more mindful of is, so my second master's is in health informatics, which specifically deals with usage of AI in healthcare and allied healthcare industries. One of the things that in our industry we often forget is, of course, while ethics is important, it's equally, if not much more important in the social justice sector for us to be accountable for the ramifications of use of AI on the environment. I feel it's very refreshing to notice at least the younger audiences being more mindful of it, rather than the boomers and our generation. I feel like we are not that mindful, but the younger ones are. I mean, there are enough and more revolts in the pipeline that are going to happen because of the depletion of groundwater resources, specifically with AI plants being set up in our very own Toronto. I think one of the biggest issues that we are facing in healthcare sector is data sovereignty. So which means maintaining our own servers and keeping the data safe within the Canadian shores. But that has come at a very, very huge environmental and climate crisis risk. And I feel as a nonprofit sector, we should be at the forefront of kind of standing our grounds, while cautiously using AI. By that, I mean, every time you reprompt something, you're basically depleting groundwater's resources, which are extremely depleted. And specifically when we come from, countries such as ours, which are having very low groundwater availability, we need to be much more mindful. So I just wanted to bring that attention and shift focus for the nonprofit sectors to be the first movers and shakers when it comes to, while of course ethical use of AI is important, it's very, very, if not more important, to make sure that we are limiting the use to as constricted as possible, and also vociferously talk about our depleting groundwater resources, specifically in Canada.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you, Shaz. And I mentioned at the beginning, like there's obviously a whole conversation that we could have about the resources it takes to power AI in entire cities, and obviously the land that AI technology is built on, oftentimes it's not with the consent of the original people of the land too, right? So there's a lot that goes into that. So that's why I think a lot of people, when they're using AI just to generate content after content after content, thank you for bringing that like to our attention, that we have to be mindful that we're not just using AI to replace all the work that we should be doing as human beings, right? So that should be the core of our thinking, and using AI is, we can use it to enhance where needed, but at the end, I know some people mentioned that, we're hesitant because we think that is going to deplete our own cognitive ability. It shouldn't. So if you feel like that's happening to you, so you're using AI in the wrong way, right? So your cognitive ability should also always be at the forefront of your work that you've produced. And like I said, for me, it's always just some administrative help that, I could use 3 other assistants to help me with some organizing, planning, and all of that. But in terms of like creating ideas, generating content, creating content, that should be your own. And it should not be something, if you feel like your cognitive abilities are no longer being used for your work, then you're not using AI properly. Any other questions? If not, I think this has been a really great session. We had I saw over 45 people at some points. And I'm really glad folks came out from all across the country to join us. I thank you, and I'm very humbled by your presence here, that you've given me the opportunity to go over this, and I'm glad that it's been helpful. Like I said, we'll share additional resources, and hopefully we can be a little bit more confident in our staff and ourselves using AI in the right way for our work.
Thank you so much, Samia, for such an informative and engaging session. And I would also like to thank everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. As mentioned earlier, the recording and the resources will be shared. And we hope that you will take some of these ideas back to your team and your organization. So thank you, everyone, again, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.